I can record just to start off in terms of kind of going through this process. So we are, really at one of the main purposes of scheduling, because we're just at that sort of moving past the midpoint, of this semester. We're just getting into lesson 5. I appreciated the feedback I got in the Google form, thinking about, but to really think about sort of put our metacognition in practice here in terms of thinking about, questions that either I have or that you have in terms of, the course, the assignments, where we're going, reflection, because much of this work, and I continually am amazed at how reflective each of you are and have gotten to be throughout the series of courses. That it seems it's much more natural for people to, first of all, start from that place and then go into either citing or whatever it is that you're trying to get to. So I think that's a really powerful thing. And then if there's any concerns or ideas, now this is the first time I've taught this course, so I always am looking for feedback. And I'm still making some changes as we go, because it needed some significant revisions, and that wasn't identified until the semester started. So I'm learning a lot from not just the content, but also kind of the flow, if you will, of the flow of the course. So, do you have any pressing questions or needs about anything that you can think of, Dana?
Well, I had a question about our next checklist assignment.
Okay.
The checklist on 160.
Yeah, that's for this lesson, the new assignment?
Yeah, I think it's due next Sunday.
Yep, November 3rd.
Yep, and what I was wondering, it's kind of just specific to me, so I don't know if it'd be helpful for anybody who's watching the recording, but I was looking through the checklist, and in this is one of the few times where I'm reading through it and I'm not 100% certain that I can apply this to my job.
Okay.
That was most of the time I can find a way to either tie it to the teacher prep program or tie it to what we do here at CSS. And just looking through the checklist, I am not 100% certain, because it's very K-12 focused.
Okay, yeah.
Not much college focused.
Go ahead.
So I guess my question is should I kind of take a stab at the checklist and just talk about where I think it doesn't necessarily apply?
Mm-hmm.
Or
so I don't have it in front of me, but let me take a look at it tomorrow when I'm in my office, and kind of with that hat on, thinking about from where you would sit, and see. I would feel better responding to that after I look at it again.
Okay, yeah, because it's mainly questions like, talking about a school lunch program, school assemblies, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Those in the bulletin boards, and these are all things that you see in a K-12 classroom, but we don't necessarily see specific, especially down here,
right,
in St. Paul. And I don't know that I would feel comfortable making guesses about how the Duluth campus operates.
Right. Yeah. No. I'm just thinking about that as you're talking. I'm jotting down some notes. So why don't can I answer that after I get to the office tomorrow?
Okay. Yeah, that's why I was thinking it might be too specific to.
No. That's good. I mean, as long as there's other, and I know that, I don't know if it was you, but somebody had also put on in terms of that last assignment, kind of major assignment, the interview of parent guardian. That'll be due December. I'm just looking at my notes here on this a little bit, December 1st, and I'll add that to the calendar as well.
Yeah.
that actually, I am really looking forward to that assignment. I mean, I love, one of the things I wanted to try to get some feedback on is every lesson has had some kind of a significant assignment in it. You know, you're really kind of, so I always think about the pacing of the work, you know, as I look at it, lesson 6, so the next lesson, lesson 6 and 8, you don't have any major assignments,
Yeah.
or major projects. So I try to think about it. This is one of the classes though out of the cert that really looks outside. It's forcing you to take, bring your introspection to looking at external things. Do you know what I mean? Like all the other courses kind of build up to developing that sort of awareness, reflection ability, more intro type activities. All of this, if you haven't noticed, is looking outward. It's looking at programs, materials, environments. And so I really like that. And I cut 2 assignments out of the course. Yeah, I mean, there was so anyway, I'm interested in learning if that, and they don't seem to be very too heavy. I mean, the unit plan was a pretty significant, but some of these checklists applying, I think these frameworks that Banks has that are research based to something that you're living and working in feels manageable to me.
I think I found the workload manageable. One suggestion I was going to make when you brought up the unit plan was, I'm wondering if the unit plan, like you said, there's 2 lessons that don't actually have any assignments. I wonder if the unit plan got pushed a little later in the course, you could scaffold something, tie it to those earlier texts that could possibly be applied to the unit plan.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and I don't know what that would look like, but instead of having a couple of missing assignments towards the later part of it, use the opportunity to maybe make that earlier assignment something that scaffolds in for the unit plan and have the unit plan come a little later.
Okay, and that's interesting because I moved it back a lesson. It was in lesson 2, and I was like, and I was like, wow, I don't feel like they have enough. You know what I mean? So I mean, and you could actually even push it, even if it was pushed back one more lesson, you could put the informational materials up because you're looking kind of at text.
Well, and you could also tie the informational materials possibly into the unit.
Plan. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So I like to kind of think about that in terms of the workload. Let's see. Anything also, how about the text? I'm also wondering about the Banks, obviously he's really the sort of grandfather of multicultural education. Although I'm open to other ideas, I can't imagine having a course, that doesn't use some of his work.
I like the Banks text. I like the Howard text too, but I'm finding that I don't reference it as much.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's just me.
Okay. Well, Banks is very, I would argue, probably more applicable than Howard is a little more theory. It's a little more, dense. So that could be why. I also think he's ready to put out a new edition.
Oh, sure.
And I think it might come with some more application, but that's a good suggestion.
I'm liking the Howard text. I'm finding it very informative, but I'm not finding as many ways to apply it to our discussions as I am the Banks text. And same with when I was doing the unit plan, I found more out of Banks that I could use than in Howard. I think I did use some Howard in there.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, but I think I used more Banks.
Yeah, that's good. Any concerns that you have? Anything that, Okay. Yeah, so I'm just kind of looking at my notes here to make sure that I'm not missing anything, but I really feel like this course really kind of starts tying in the earlier work in the previous courses, because the critical pedagogy course is really that sort of now take everything and create something to make change.
Yeah.
It's the capstone type thinking. So hold on to this stuff because it's going to help inform, as you move, um, so one of the things I like to try to have people think about, we don't do as much journaling in this. I mean, you did kind of one journal. There's journaling in some of the previous courses, but there's not a lot of that kind of personal writing in this course as much. And so I don't want people to sway away too much of really thinking about, areas that you've grown in. I like to use this tree metaphor. Some people go straight up, some people go left to, vertical, horizontal, some grow more underneath the ground, metaphorically, meaning they're more introspective. They're really thinking deeply about things. Some grow more outward, where you're really pushing, making outward changes. So that could be, evidenced by curriculum or, activities you're doing within the workplace. Or so I kind of like to use this metaphor to think about, ways that we grow, because we grow in both ways. And some of you are growing, and really taking things on outwardly. Some are really growing inwardly. Some are, doing it, both. And I would argue there's a sweet spot of a little bit of that both going on, because it's hard to push things out if we don't have that work internally done, right?
Yeah.
So I like to remind people, and in a larger class, to be able to talk about and think about, what are some of these areas. And as we get towards the end of the semester, we'll really be thinking about those areas, being able to identify, I've really made progress in this area. Because when you take critical pedagogy, you're going to retake the IDI, and that's really fun because you know where you started. And obviously the hope is that you're going to see some growth when you retake it. Some people regress, and there's reasons for that. That isn't a negative thing. So I like to let people know, but sometimes that happens because you become more aware of things. And so you respond differently. So it's sort of an interesting thing, but more often than not, you see growth happen over time, which I think is really powerful. So I like to use this metaphor to really help people hang on to. I think in metaphors, for whatever reason, it helps to remember things, but to think about the ways in which we grow. And a lot of the work that you've been doing thus far this semester has been looking again outwardly. So that's above ground, I like to call it. The below ground stuff is still happening, because a lot of that comes out in your discussions where people are talking about, things they thought, or the way they've been educated, or, different examples that people have shared are really about that, really reflecting on experience, if you will. So I like to just share that and take some time to get people to think about that. And if you have any comments or thoughts on that.
I know what you're saying. A lot of the growth that I've been going through in this process so far has been mostly the underground, the introspective. But this last assignment, I actually, the evaluating materials, was one of my first forays into outward action.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. I was working with Tiffany. She kind of wants to replace one of our EDU 5111 texts.
Oh, nice.
And I looked at it through the lens of the bank's checklist, and it failed pretty miserably, actually.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, and I just did the little quick 2-page summary for the assignment, but I think that I can help make a pretty firm argument for replacing that text.
Good.
I think Tiffany will be happy to hopefully she'll be able to utilize some of the work I did in that checklist.
Right.
In her argument toward finding a potentially better text to use for that course.
Okay, that's great. And that's exactly the kinds of things, we hope to see,
Yep.
especially, not just through individual courses, but through the certificate as a whole, that you have those skills and that sort of knowledge base now to be able to, make those changes. So that's a great example. So for
Yep.
those that are going to be viewing our recording or our Zoom, be thinking about that. You're not with us tonight, but be thinking about the ways in which you're growing, you know, above ground, below ground, equally important.
And it can even be a small little step. Is
Yep.
is still growth progress in the outward direction.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dana. So just in terms of thinking about the program evaluation, the interview case study, of course, discussions are woven through, and this kind of goes back to thinking about the scaffolding of the work and stuff. Looking at the program evaluation checklist, and that's really to kind of get a bird's eye view again, like you had pointed out earlier, Dana, some of the very specifics and looking at a more of a school system, and that's an assignment I could modify very easily, I think. Um, and then the parent guardian interview and the case study, I think, is going to be really, really fun, because some of that draws from Paul Gorski's work in looking at and developing cases. I'm not going to go into the assignment too much in detail, but be thinking about who you might want to interview for that assignment, because you will be doing, a case uh, that sort of is a summation of the interview, and there's a template that we're going to use, and this is all in the syllabus. That's a case analysis from Paul Gorski. So you'll be giving it to somebody else in the course. So I really think that's going to be kind of a cool way to sort of tie everything together. From that piece, and then of course the discussions within, embedded within each lesson. We did do, I'm wondering what people think of using VoiceThread for discussions. What do you use that much, Dana, or not too much?
I haven't used it too much.
Okay.
Um, I I've had some presentations. I find that I don't go back to the voice threads if I'm referencing something for a future assignment.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at an assignment and I want to look at, oh, hey, in this past class, I had this really interesting point. Maybe I can use that again and elaborate on it for this new assignment. I don't find myself going back to my VoiceThread presentations
Okay.
as often as I find myself going back to my actual written papers. But that
Okay.
could also just be part of my learning style. I'm much more visual than I am verbal.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I was just kind of thinking about that. I know that we sprinkle them in other classes and use that, use it as part of, sometimes just to mix up the discussions so they're not always text-based, that,
Yeah.
some of them are done orally, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of one thought I had. But
I think it's a good. I do think it's good to utilize both, because I think that there are people that thread probably is a preferred method.
right.
For
Yeah,
discussion.
no, I would agree. That's a good point. So that's kind of the nutshell, if you will, kind of where we're headed. But I really, really want people to think about, as they think about the work that you've done and work moving forward, this whole tree metaphor, thinking about growth in different ways. Because a lot of times, I've learned in different professional development scenarios I've been in, is that we don't often credit, like you had said earlier, the small steps, but also that growth that we feel internally. And some of that internal growth is going to perhaps prompt discomfort in some way. You may find yourself feeling uncomfortable in certain situations you may not have before. It could be that you're more aware of things around you, things going on, that you may not have otherwise even noticed, right? So, for example, in this lesson, in talking about backstage racism, some of the things that go on, there's some little bit of raw language in one of the reads that you have for this lesson. And so there's an example there of people that are comfortable around their friends, and this kind of is seen as something that is just sort of laughed off. And that, I'm not suggesting that anybody is in those kind of scenarios, but you could be in a situation where, maybe now the norm isn't comfortable for you anymore because you've developed a broader, deeper, different, whatever you want to call it, sort of frame of reference, that things that may have gone unnoticed, you may start noticing. So be patient with yourself, because that growth can really be difficult for people, but it's really important to continue to move this work forward. Is that sort of discomfort. And it is sometimes like uprooting a tree. I was going to take a picture. Yeah, I had a heck of a week last week. My son was sick. We had that wicked storm, so power was out. The college went down with power. I was in the middle of, I lost everything because of course, nothing gets, if you don't go into Blackboard continuously, it times you out. And it was a heck of a week. I'll just say that. But anyway, my neighbor up the street, huge, one of their trees was totally uprooted. Oh. And I was going to take a picture and share that, because sometimes that's kind of what this work feels like. We're completely uprooting things that we've known to be true, and we may not believe them to be true anymore. And that's like cultivating new soil for our roots to grow in new and healthy ways. So I like to remind people of that's something that goes on in this process, and to be, careful with yourself and with others.
Yeah, and what to do with that giant gaping hole that's in the ground now. You'll eventually find a way to fill it, but it's there for a while.
Yeah, it's well, and with this neighbor's tree, so it totally uprooted, and the tree hit the front of their house, so they lost their porch. So that part got sawed off, but you still see the giant, base of the tree is, uprooted. And my sister was with me the other day, and we were driving by, and she's like, "Is that the storm?" I'm like, "Yeah." It was crazy. It was a very powerful storm, and I just was praying that our little puppy didn't blow away in the wind. Every time I brought her out to go to the bathroom, I'd hang on to the leash. It was hard because she didn't like going out either. But yeah. So anyway, it was a crazy week last week. But anyway, that tree sort of metaphor reminds me of that. So I like to just remind people of that, and to be thinking about as you are doing this work, frames of reference change. And many of you have talked about that a little bit in your various discussion points, but be mindful of that, I guess, is the best advice I can give you. So Dana, do you have questions? I think that's my last slide.
I don't think I have any questions at this point. Oh wait, I do.
You want me to stop the recording, or?
Either or. It's a Blackboard resource that's missing.
Okay, let me know. I'll write it down. And
checklist assignment. The rubric for the next assignment. There it is. Yeah. So
did that not get into the resources link?
No, that one's not there. So the rubric for the multicultural.
The program checklist?
The program checklist
okay.
is not in there. The evaluating materials rubric is there, but the other one isn't.
Okay, I'll get that in there. Resources. Let me just make sure. Yep. So it's our lesson 5 activity. Yep. Okay.
That's the one thing. It says, like, I knew there was something. It's like there's something missing in the resource section.
Nope, very good.
Yeah.
Program eval checklist. I just want to make sure I've got it. Is missing. Okay. I will get that in there.
All right.
Let's see if there's anything else that comes up. Reach out, send me an email, or this is a little short time, but I think 30-minute check-in was pretty good. I appreciate talking to you and seeing you, and thank you for your work. And hopefully everyone is going to be viewing this as well. And for those not joining us tonight, reach out with questions. Small and mighty class, onward.
Yeah.
All right, Dana, take care. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
See you later.
Yep. Bye.